For the interrupt. We got late. So today I am starting a new series where I will be live streaming on every Sunday at 10 a.m. In this live stream, we will try to learn by implementing some projects. So for now, without getting any delay, let me explain what we are going to create here and what will be the project. So for a startup, we will be developing SMS gateway in this series. So what is the SMS gateway and what our intent is in this particular project? So we will try to create some code by which we can expose some endpoint, or by which if somebody is making any HTTP request on that endpoint by providing the mobile number and the text content, then we will somehow send the SMS to that particular receiver. To achieve this, we will have to implement some sort of GSM settings or GSM gateway. Generally what happened, the SMS gateway use GSM. uh, SMS gateway provides some GSM. They connect with some GSM providers, and from there they send it. But for the sake of easiness, I will be doing with the help of Android device. So let me explain a little bit about this project. So here, let's suppose I have a device, or we can say browser or endpoint, we can say API, or let's say a simple user. So let's suppose here one users hits a URL, and we web server. Let me explain. Yeah. So here we have a web server. We will expose some URL, some sort of endpoints. So let's connect uh, to this. On the endpoint which we will talking about is, we can put some text here. So here basically the URL should be something like sms.send, and it could be a post URL. So let me make it a post URL, and they will send some sort of JSON body. So body like something this. It will have mobile number. So let's suppose the number would be something like +91, or we can directly put this. So this is the mobile number, and then there would be some sort of content that we want to send. So there would be some SMS body which will have the SMS actual content. Hello, this is a SMS from via my SMS gateway 8. So we can have this here. Okay. So a user will make a post record SMS/send, and with this body we will get the request here on our web server. So this web server, so that we are making SMS gateway, so we will need to handle lots of requests concurrently. So we will use some site of as message broker. For this project, I am using RabbitMQ. Okay, we are not getting, or we can say message broker. This will we can use this one. So from here, this endpoint will put to this message broker. Simple. This will come here. Mhm. This will put in our message broker. This will be our RabbitMQ. Yeah, and this will be our web server. So for this deployment, like this project deployment, I will be using some free services on the cloud. So I will put my this code on like Oracle Cloud. Like Oracle Cloud give us some free VMs, so I will be using that. So they will be some Linux VMs. So I will like expose a Nginx web server, and from there would be our ASP.NET core server. So we will deploy Nginx, and behind the scene we will proxy it to ASP.NET core, and from the ASP.NET core this particular endpoint will be there, and this endpoint just accept the request and put it to the RabbitMQ, and then it will just give you some, let's suppose, accepted. uh, yeah, so from here you will get a accepted response. I guess that is 202 accepted, which is again pop sent back to the customer. And the main thing will happen here. So after that is put into RabbitMQ, we will have some background worker written in our .NET itself. Worker jobs, background worker. Hmm. Okay, we can use some of the diagram which we can present as a worker. Yeah, let's call it so the background worker. So we will have like a cluster of background workers. So basically we need a cluster of background worker because we will need to like scale up it. So that's why. So here we will put, and again we will need to like, okay, it's going a square, I will need a rectangle. Okay, so let's suppose this is the cluster of our background workers. Bring to front. So this diagram is very important because whenever we will look or explain to somebody, this should be very clear in our mind, right? So make a group here. Group. Okay. Then again we have some text here. Background workers. we can group it. Okay, so these background worker will fetch the messages from here. Yes, parallelly they will fetch messages. Right, and here they will do the basic processing. So the core logic will be something like so the request comes in this particular endpoint stored in a db, and from that db this they will store the like the this particular request, and we will send a reference id so that whenever a customer want to check the status of that particular request, he can see it. So from here, yes, they put in the db. So let me do that thing also. So here we will have a db, or let me make more precise. So we will do MySQL DB. Yeah. So we will use this MySQL DB here, and from this point of, yeah. So this will write to DB here. Save the request to DB and return a ref ID. So that will happen here. What is happening? Okay, we just need this text box here. So this request will go to this, and then we will send it to our RabbitMQ, and from RabbitMQ the worker will pick it. After picking this from RabbitMQ, they will make yeah. So let me create some other things. So from here, basically what this worker will do, they fetch the content and they will put it to FCM. FCM, what is FCM? FCM is Firebase messaging, cloud messaging. So what happens, so whenever we have to do a push notification on a mobile device, we basically do we send it to FCM, and FCM there is an integration with the like Google services on the Android device. So we will need to integrate our FCM SDK in the app, and that FCM will help you to send the real-time push notification to the devices. So from here, we will send it to FCM Firebase messaging. So let's suppose here we have Firebase, right? So we will send our payload to this Firebase, and from the Firebase, the notification will be sent to our mobile device. So mobile, let me create it first. or we can say it's more precise Android device. Yeah, so we will put, let's suppose, this mobile device. So this will send us the post notification. It will be a post notification. FCM app push notification. So our mobile will get this FCM notification, and here our app, we will need to develop some kind of Android app which will do our some sort of processing. So what are the steps that this will work like here? So first thing, like what it will do at installation, on installation, register the FCM token and send it to API, and from again listen for FCM push message on a background service. Then on message, use native telephony API to send SMS. That is the final goal here. And again, we can put some sort of notify the API for SMS. It's simple. So this is what our whole structure will look like. So let me try to fit in a single frame. Can we put it in a single frame? We should try. I guess I can put this here and Firebase here, and it is good enough. And we can move our device some sort of here. Yeah. So here we have, we can do this also. Yes. So this is what our DB is doing, and this is our mobile app. So we can take it further. Yes. And this is what our mobile app is doing. So in short, we have this architecture. So this is the final architecture that we are going to implement in our project. So let's consider what we have to develop to achieve all these things, right? Okay, can we dock it? Nice. Let it be. Yeah. So first of all, let me open a notepad. Nice. So we are going to develop lot more thing here. Let me hide it. Yeah. First of all, we need to implement this API endpoint. So we need to implement some API endpoint, right? So to implement this, we are going to implement a ASP.NET Core project, and here we will expose API endpoints and what all are the API endpoint that we are going to implement. So first will be like, so this is what the actual core thing is happening, but we will need to cater some of the cross-cutting concern also. Like first, the user need to be registered. So otherwise, this complete project will be can be used by some other person in a abusive manner. So we will create some user endpoint, and here we will have, let's suppose, sign up, sign in, sign up, login, and once he is login, then he can like do some sort of device linking, because one, you need to, for every account we will need an Android device to link. So uh, uh, we need to let me implement it like in different manner. So let's suppose we need to implement some gateway for device. So there will be link a device, de-link a device, right? So we can link and de-link the devices, and any other endpoint needed we can like implement going forward. And the core is SMS. We can send, we can list, we can get status, right? And there could be an endpoint for bulk SMS less bulk, send and status. So for a particular account we can have SMS list, so we can get those details here. So this is the basic that we are going to implement here. Then we will need some sort of worker. Yeah, so this was the endpoint that we have created. And to do the persistence, API endpoint, database, for persistence we will be using MySQL with the help of and to connect the MySQL from the ASP.NET Core, we will using Dapper and MySQL connector driver, right? So I am not going to use the default one that is provided by Oracle. I will be using this MySQL connector. I I have a like read lots of about it, and they say it's much performant than the native one. Then we will need some background workers. For background workers we will use what did they say, ASP.NET Core hosted services. So in the same project we will create ASP.NET Core hosted services that will work as the background worker, and we will make it some sort of in a manner that it can be like scaled up, so that we will handle during the implementation phase. Then we will need a message broker. For this we will be using the RabbitMQ, and then we will need FCM. and on Appium Cloud. So we will use Appium for messaging, and then we will need an Android app. An Android app has these features, so we will implement those things here. Since Android app can get lots of requests, so we will use some sort of queuing on Android app, so that that is not hampered. So all the data which is sent through the FCM will queue up, and the background service which is responsible for sending the SMS will pick a message from here, and that will send it and then update the background or the backend. So that's all which are we are planning to implement here. So I guess if you want to take the screenshot, you can take it. This is what we are making. Let me create a screenshot from here only. Okay, snipping tool. Right. I guess I can take the whole screen. Sorry. I can save it. Let me save it. Okay. Let me create a folder. My SMS gateway system architecture, which is stored here. Right. So every day, whenever we are talking about this, we can see it like how we are progressing up. So that all that we had to discuss as a architecture point of view. So now we will go to our Visual Studio and try to set up a project. Okay. So let me open Visual Studio here. So let me create a new project. One more thing that I have missed here during the architecture discussion. Yes. So this is the whole functioning of our application, but we will need to give a dashboard to user. So for that we will using Angular to create our dashboard, and here we will have the login facility, or we can say sign up, login, and to device linking we can expose some device QR to link with QR, and list this architecture. And now we are going to implement our first thing here, this API endpoint. And to create it, I am going to create a new project here. So first of all, let me explain you how you structure your code. So anywhere if you are implementing a project, so let my SMS gateway is my project. So here I have some docs. So let me create a new folder here and call is docs, and you can put all your documentation here. Then you can make a src folder where you will have the source code. Here we have two system, a backend and one front end. So we will create this folder, and to keep our db schema in the version control, we can put db schema. Yeah, so we will need at least these three folders for our source code. And so our API is going to be in this backend folder. So let me copy this folder URL, and on the, okay, I closed it, Visual Studio. Okay, so you start up your Visual Studio and you can create a new project. And for this particular project I am using ASP.NET Core Web API. ASP.NET Core Web API. Next, let me put it here and call it my SMS gateway. And next, we do not this thing use controller uncheck to use minimal API. No, we will use controllers. We will need open API support. Yes, we will be using 6.0. We are not using any inbuilt authentication by the system. We will use our own. So keep it simple. Great. So now we have our this setup. This API project is here. Now to since in a particular project there is lots of code which can be categorized, so we will try to do the same here. So this is our front facing project which will basically execute and get the request. Apart from that, every project we do some sort of what we say business logic. So for that we basically use some class library. So we will be using this class library project and call it services. And boom. So we will have some services which basically represent our business logic, and these services again can communicate to um, some sort of database. So for that we have DAO layer, data access objects. We will put our objects here, and there will be many more classes to hold some sort of data either from the database or to transfer between the request and different layers. So for that we will create a entity layer. Here we will have a normal POCO classes. Then we can have a layer where we can declare our utility function, util layer. Here we can say the encryption logic, reading a file or exporting some sort of CSV. We can write the common codes here, right? So that's all the structure will look like, and we need to reference this. So services will have the reference of our data access object, entity, and util, right? And the util will not have any sort of like reference. Entity can have the reference of util, and again the DAO layer will have the reference of let me say it here. Yeah, DAO layer will have reference of util and entity, and the final our front layer will have the access to all the layers, right? So this is the references from by which we can connect all these layers into one. Okay, that's all. We will need to implement our code here, and before that, so we are using like ASP.NET Core, and it is come with some sort of dependency injection, like we can see here services. So any layer which is like any layer which is available here, we need some sort of by default it is console application, so we do not have those reference added for the dependency and for the config. So here I will try to add a common what we say, a reference, Microsoft dot configuration, I guess that is Microsoft dot extension. Let me check it. I am not remembering it. So here. Basically, what I'm looking is on the controller we can have some reference to high configuration, and it is coming from this, yes, Microsoft extension dot configuration. We will need this. So let's on the any layer we can access our configuration. uh, so to do that, let me first, I will need it on the data access layer, because I need to access the connection string for the database. So I can use this abstraction will work, or this is fine for me, and we will be using version 6. We got it. And still this can be in the util, because we can read lots of like encryption key, all that things, so we can add this also here. The version 6 is what we are targeting for. Okay, this is cool. So we have all these here. On the service, will I need or not, we can add going forward on our development. Yeah, so this is what we got here, and let's clean up our files name here first. So we have this controller, which is, and we have this dot, so I am deleting this first. Sorry. Yeah, so first I will create a base controller here. Okay, empty API controller. This will work as the base for all my controllers, so I am going to call it app based controller, right? So we will got this simple, and from here let me delete this controller and add our controllers. So add a controller for user. So let me call it user controller. Here we will have our, and we will inherit it from this. Okay, we have our user controller, so we can remove all those from here. We will check if that will break something or not. Yeah, so we have user controller, then we will have the device controller, right? So add new controller for this empty controller device to link and delink. Then finally we will have what we called it, the message or SMS controller. Mm, close all, and new controller, call it the SMS controller, right? So we got our controller set up here. Maybe we will need more, we can add later, but for now these are the good. Okay, build it. If anything is breaking on, cool. And let's put some device, public I action result, and call this as a get devices, and we can get okay, just see it. And here we can pass from query string or the from path, and we will call it a string user id. Okay, and let me call is http get, and root will be something like this user id. So we will get a something device less, we can name it devices devices, or we can say user devices less. So this will work, I guess. So let's run it once so that we can see if it's working or not. mm, Debug it. So I guess we can run from here only. We got our server documentation, and we have this API slash device slash user devices. And here we can pass our user ID. So let's suppose I'm passing it 123, and put a breakpoint here if I am getting the request or not. Right? Execute it. We got our user ID here. Great. So this is what we are actually expecting here. Or simply we can do user devices is good or not. Now we can try to change this users device less, like let it be for now. Okay. Similarly on device, yeah, on the SMS we can have okay, I can copy this all, and I can ask for the okay, I replace the class itself. Okay, remove it, it is not needed anymore. Device SMS slash, we can ask for the get status. So from here we can put this and status, and here we can use ref id. You got ref id from route, we will get the ref id, and so the URL will look something like sms slash ref id slash status. And similarly we can have some here in user. So if I talk about this, we can just ask it's a login, and we can use s, or let me make it get only, so we can profile and user slash user id and profile user id user ID. Okay, this, and so we can get the profile. Now if I run, I will have 3 rows, right? So we have device, SMS, and user. Here we can get the user devices. Here I can get the status of my SMS. Let's suppose this was some set of SMS ID, so I got this. Similarly, I have the user profile. We can use user ID and the profile. So that also, this is the very good like implementation of this Swagger thing. So if you like during the creation of your project, if you check support for OpenAPI, it's already add the Swagger. So you can see here it added these 2 services in our dependency, add endpoint API Explorer and Swagger chain, and in our app it is showing use Swagger and Swagger UI. So what we have seen is the Swagger UI, and the Swagger use Swagger basically give us the this particular thing. So let me show it here. So this is the UI that we are getting, and this JSON is getting from the use Swagger. We can directly use this JSON somewhere else for exploring our API, which is compatible with OpenAPI to standard. Yeah. So this is what we have created so far, our API endpoint. And from here on, similarly, let's create some service. So Nobit, and I am looking to add a service called hmm, device service, which will be responsible for dealing with device request. Make it public, right? And similarly, we will have some service for user service. This will be public so that it can be accessed on the different layer. Again, we will have some service for SMS service, and on the DAW layer we will need some sort of common DAW. I will create this to expose a SQL connection which can be accessed in other DAW also. So we will not try to create the connection on every class whenever we are using it. So add a class for device DAW. We get a device DAW. So let me first implement this one. This will be much better. First, we will need to add the driver for MySQL connector, which is what I am looking for. And this one here. This MySQL connector I am looking for. So let me add this MySQL connector here. It got added. So here I will try to CTR. So we got this. I was looking for this I configuration. So I am just doing a dependency injection of this particular configuration here. Private read only. This I can use, do it protected also. Let me do protected so that it can use in the child classes also if they needed it. And again, I am going to explore IDB connection. Sorry, I am going to expose a IDB connection. What is happening here? IDB connection. So we will be using Dapper, which basically work as the extension method over IDB connection. So this particular method will give it a connection, and let me call it a getDB connection, and this will do nothing but new as a MySQL connection, and here we will need to pass the connection string. So in our app setting we can expose a connection string with the help of connection strings, and we can write a key here. Let's suppose, let me call this appdb connection string. Okay, and this is, so this is the key for our db connection. So on common DAO I can like declare as a constant db connection string key. This is a good practice to declare all the const, like any constant string that we are using, declare it as a constant, so that it can like whenever we need to modify it, we only need to modify it one place. So here from our configuration object, configuration dot connection string, get connection string, and we can pass the names. So this is the name, and we got the connection string, and we will get a new connection here always. And on the device we can like make a constructor, or we can basically, we just need to inherit this common DAO in our other DAOs, so that we can get this thing, right? So this is the dependency which is fetched from this and went to the root one. Similarly, we can have another DAO class which we are going to call as the user DAO, make it public, and from here we need to do this, right? And for another class, let it call as SMS DAO, and we can mark it as a public, inherit with this particular class, and implement this. So we got our DAO layer setup, we got our service layer setups. On in this service layer we can like, we need to implement our, like we need the dependency of our these DAO classes. So we can do the constructor here, and we can add our DAOs. So basically it is looking for user DAO, I guess, yes, and we can call it as a DAO. It's main DAO here. So this dot DAO is DAO. So we are getting the reference for our DAO here. Similarly, we can do in SMS DAO. We can inject here SMS DAO. Sorry, in our SMS service, we can inject our SMS DAO. So this is not mandatory, but whenever you are doing anything, any project in like in industry, you will need to like make the things such a way that it can be managed properly. So you know what you have written, but if some new developers comes in, if you have written in a standard manner, then he can learn it, else it will be very tough for the newcomers. So that's why these standards are there, and this also make your code very flexible, so that if you need any sort of change down in your development life, so this can that can be implemented easily if it is structured properly, right? So this is what we got our service DAO and main layer. Then on the util side, let make it as a helper. I generally make a helper class and mark it as a static, and it will have some helper function which is which will use across our application. And for any particular type we can have the uh, dedicated util for that, like the string util for any specific string function, or any let's say uh, or date time util. Similarly, on entity side we will need to define our entities. So let me create a folder here which is going to call as model or view model. I call it vm. So any post request or the response that we are returning to our end user can be done with the vms. So let me log in vm. It is responsible for getting the request in post body whenever we are doing the login. So we can public string username, public string password, public bool, or remember. So we can get this particular parameter, and accordingly we can like do our logics. So this is the VM that we got here, and in our controller we can create a login. What we say, the login method, it is going to http post, or we can directly say login. There is nothing coming from here, you are getting from body, and the type is login VM, or we can say model, right? So this will return you your this particular class model. So that's all I guess for this particular session. On next Sunday we will continue this, so that like we will not get too much in one day. If you are getting something interesting to ask, you can ask. So we got this one. We have a schema login VM which is looking like something this, right? So here if I try to make a request here, they are asking for me this, and if I make execute request we get the same response. Or if I do a what we say, the breakpoint here in user, let me try with this again, I got those data in here, right? So I guess that's all here for today. Will not go like too much in one day, so so that we can like grasp things easier. So after this stream I will basically mm, after completion of this stream I will post this as a video, so that you can use it if you are missing something. Okay, thanks for joining in. See you on next Sunday. Thank you. The stream